Welcome to the Art of Value Creation with me, Siya Mdingi, the CEO of Vivre Consulting. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to peel back the curtain on value and value creation, both for enterprise leaders, so be you a business leader, a nonprofit organization leader, or a venture leader, or a career professional in any industry. But before we even start with the presentation, or rather with the talk today, let's go grocery shopping for milk in this particular instance. So walk with me as I, uncover this. You have two friends, so it's you and your friends talking about milk, as it were. You have a friend called Amy, and she's very health conscious. For her, the food that she eats has to provide as much health benefits as it possibly can. It has to provide the highest nutritional benefit as she possibly can. And 9 times out of 10, she's buying premium food. So she's buying the highest quality milk. She's buying the highest quality fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables. And for her, price is not an object. So in this discussion about milk, for her, she wants the highest quality milk. She wants full cream milk because that's the milk with the highest, macronutrients. And she buys premium quality milk. And as a result, for her, price is no object. You've got a second friend whose name is Tandeka. She is lactose intolerant, and so is not entirely too crazy about the milk discussion, but nevertheless, she participates. But for her, because she's not lactose intolerant, she cannot drink dairy milks. And at some point in her life, she used to be able to drink dairy milk, but as she grew older, the lactose intolerance started coming in. For her, though, she is very particular about the taste of her milks. She noticed that whenever she was drinking lactose-free or alternative milks, such as, soy milk, nut milk, almond milk, etc., etc., she would find that their tastes did not obviously match up with lactose milk. And as a result, she would always be very particular about the brands of non-lactose milk that she was buying because she was chasing that same mouthfeel and taste that she would get from ordinary milk. So she is very, very particular about the taste of her milk. If it tastes yucky to her, she's not going to buy it. But at the same time, she is not that particular because she is cost sensitive, or rather she is aware of how much these particular milks will cost her. And so she's like, I'm particular about the milk that I drink, but I'm not that particular. And then we've got you, the third party in this discussion. You're pretty pragmatic about your food. Anything that tastes good, you'll put into your mouth. And as far as it goes about milk, the only selection criteria you have for your milk is that it needs to just taste like milk, right? And the pricing needs to make sense. So it can't be that you're buying milk that is super expensive, but that doesn't really make sense in terms of your budget, right? As far as you're concerned, the milk must taste like milk and the pricing must also make sense. So in this discussion that you had with your friends, this would actually be the first brush that you have with value. Because each of your friends have different deciding factors as it relates to the type of milk or the brand of milk that you guys will end up purchasing. These deciding factors in each of the cases, each of you and your friends' case, are the benefits that you are looking to gain from your milk purchase. And this is value, effectively. And so you can see in this discussion, the concept of value starts to come up and come alive. But how would you then define factors that make clients choose differently in a neater way? And from your perspective, either as an entrepreneur, so a person who's running an enterprise, or a person who is in the professional sphere, how would you be able to describe that concept of value either to your clients, your partners, your stakeholders, or your employers? And in short, value is providing your offering to a client or a stakeholder in a way that is meaningful to them. And we're going to be going into this definition a little bit more as we discuss the principles of value, which effectively are, the practice of value creation. So let's take this moment to sort of put things into perspective, right? Why would discussions around value or understanding what value is, or even value creation, even matter to begin with? the fact of the matter is that the enterprise environment, be you running an enterprise or be employed in an enterprise, the enterprise environment as a whole is fast pivoting towards value creation as a standard and no longer as an afterthought. It used to be that, your profit margins were the most important thing that would be pertinent for you as either an enterprise leader or a person who's working within an enterprise. But as it turns out, value creation impacts your profit margins even. So value creation, in a sense, or value as a whole, becomes slightly more important than your profit margins, because if you're not creating value, you're not making profits. So it's becoming increasingly apparent that it's not quite good enough to have either a good product or a service, or to have the requisite skills as an employee, right? You now need to be able to articulate and lead with value. And in order to keep up with this requirement to lead with value, you must understand, firstly, how people understand and engage with the concept of value, right? Secondly, you must begin to operate from a value-centered point of view. And this is now either as an enterprise leader or as a employee, right? And finally, you must take on a new way of thinking as you are approaching value and its creation. Now, when I'm referring to this new way of thinking, I am in fact referring to value innovation, which is an approach where all of your activities, your offerings, the way that your enterprise engages with its environment and stakeholders, or if you are a career professional, the way you engage with your environment and your stakeholders, everything is looked at from a value point of view. And this might look like asking questions in your approach or in your work, like, does the thing that I'm doing right now create value or does it erode it? What kind of value are we creating when we do this certain thing, when we take away this certain thing, when we add this certain thing? What kind of value is being created or destroyed if we are doing the specific thing? And how can we convert as a given thing or a given value into something that we can use? So for example, if you've identified that doing a certain thing now creates value, how can we then convert this thing that we found into something that we can now use and leverage? And now this kind of thinking and questioning, this lines of questioning and thinking, is all called value-centered thinking. And in order to be able to succeed, you must now get into the practice and get into the action or the activity of value-centered thinking. So when I refer to enterprise leaders, I'm referring to people who are within that space, who are either running a business, a nonprofit, a creative venture, a social entrepreneurship venture, etc., etc., etc. And when it comes to value and value creation, your angle would be now to land clients, to land partnerships, to land investors, or to improve your enterprise offerings. So that's what the line of thinking that you must be thinking about when you're thinking, how does value now impact, how does taking on a value-centered thinking impact my enterprise? It would be to help you land clients, partnerships, and investors, and to help you improve your enterprise offerings, which would in turn drive enterprise growth, right? And then if you are a career professional, right, who would you be if I would say, this is directed at a career professional? You are a person who is within a professional job or a professional industry. And you would either be at the start of your career, at the middle of your career, or at the maturity point. So functionally, you would just be a career professional at any stage of your career. And your specific angle would then be towards landing employment and or board positions even. It might also be to improve your professional positioning, your professional brand. And this is how value creation would then be able to improve your career experience by way of improving your professional brand, improving your positioning, and helping you land better opportunities in terms of employment and or even board positions. So now let's move on to the meat of the fair, which is to talk about value and value creation. In order to powerfully engage your prospective client or your prospective partner, or even your employer, because you are a career professional, you must be able to clearly articulate the unique value that you have to offer. And in order to clearly articulate the value that you have to offer, you must become familiar with how value is understood in general. Because you can't articulate something in a way that is meaningful, which, if you remember, is the definition of value, doing something that is meaningful to a person or a target, without understanding how they understand value, or understand how it is that value becomes meaningful to them. So luckily, there are consistencies to value and the dynamics that are at work with regards to value creation, because it can be a little bit bewildering trying to figure out, oh my goodness, what does value mean to this person that I'm speaking to? What even is value as a concept? Where do I even begin? So there are consistencies to the dynamics at work behind value and subsequently behind value creation. And those consistencies that can be taken advantage of are called the principles of value. And in effect, how I was able to develop the 4 principles of value is because of my own personal experiences. So before I was a value strategist, I worked in sales, B2B sales, which is business to business sales. And in those positions, I had, occupied at a large company, at small companies. The consistency was always that in my sales role, I was selling to other enterprises. And it allowed me the opportunity to really study how it was that enterprises, did the things that they were doing. As you might understand, if you are yourself a salesperson watching this, to be able to sell effectively or to be able to assist your client, you must understand the way in which they work, so as to understand the offerings that would best suit them when you are now engaging with them, right? So in this engagement with my clients, I was able to understand the way that they had worked. And all of the clients that I was engaging with on some level or another had always had value creation in mind. They might not have been able to articulate it as value creation, but there was consistencies in the way that they were going about it, regardless of their size, regardless of the industry type. There were always, these kinds of consistent ways that were going about creating value, even if the value that they were creating differed from company to company, industry to industry. And those dynamics and consistencies that I noticed is what I then developed into the 4 principles of value, which is what we're about to jump into next. So principle number 1, as we've defined, is that value is providing an offering that is meaningful to a client or a stakeholder, aka in a way that meets their value needs. So now with this particular definition of value, we now have a new term, which is the value needs. What are those? They are effectively the full extent of what your client or your stakeholder is looking for in an offering, and that includes and goes beyond the offering itself, right? And with this principle, we've got a couple other additional terms that help us apply it. And those terms are the pain point, the customer need, and the value need, which is one that we've just covered. So firstly, the pain point is a problem that your clients or your stakeholders are experiencing. So ideally, whatever it is that you are offering will resolve their pain point, which is why they are looking at your offering in the first place. The next is the customer need, which is the motive or the reason that makes your clients or stakeholders consider engaging your offering. So ideally, your offering meets these. And then the value need, of course, is the full extent of what your client or your stakeholder is looking for in an offering, and your offering should once again meet these. Now, when you look at these 3 terms and concepts side by side, they at first look like they're saying the same thing. They are related to each other through how they reference each other and touch on the offering that we are referring to, so your particular offering. However, the major difference between them is the specific scopes of each of the terms. And this is the thing that I'm about to explain through an example. So let's take a moment to imagine something. You are at work, it's lunchtime, and you're absolutely starving. Your office building neighbors a mini shopping complex with some food shops and some cafes, and so you decide that you're going to treat yourself to lunch. In this particular moment, you're facing a particular pain point. That pain point is, I'm hungry. I need to eat something. Your customer need is I need to eat something that's not too heavy because I'm still at work and I don't want to fall asleep at the desk, right? And then your value need is I need to buy something good from some place where I can sit comfortably and take a breather from the office. So, do you see how now we've expanded on each of them and the scopes for each of them? It gives a little bit more information into what you are looking for, right? We begin with the pain point, I'm hungry, and then that's it. We move on to the customer need. I'm hungry and I need to eat something that's not too heavy because I'm still at work and I don't want to fall asleep. And then finally, the value need expands that even further and says, I need to eat something good from somewhere I can sit comfortably and take a breather from the office. So, what is the takeaway here, right? What are we supposed to draw from this example? Hopefully, you get a filling lunch at the end of this particular example. But if we look at this now from the cafe's point of view, the cafe that is now seeking to gain you as a client or a customer, if the cafe is able to identify and meet your pain point, right, they'll have you as a client for that particular day, right? But if you're not hungry, they don't have you as a client. Or if they come across somebody else who is able to make a better lunch than you, then you lose them as a client, right? If you're able to meet their pain point and their customer need, they'll remember you to say, oh, okay, cool, this food was actually remarkably filling, but I didn't fall asleep at my desk, which is fantastic. So I know I'll just keep coming back to them every time I've not brought my lunch, right? But if that cafe is able to meet your particular pain point, your customer need, and your value need, they'll gain you as a repeat customer. And they'll gain you as a repeat customer even when, you're not in the same context as you were when you first met them. So for example, you went there because you were hungry, you got your hungry food, or your food because you were hungry rather. You did the food was filling enough that you were no longer hungry, but you didn't fall asleep at the desk, which is another one. But because the ambiance of the place was so lovely, they're like, oh, you know what? I'll keep coming back here because it's such a lovely place to sit. Or maybe on some day you'll be like, oh, I just need to decompress away from the office. Let me go down there. I might as well grab myself something to eat while I'm there. See? So in this particular example, we've got the pain point, which reveals the need, right? The customer need then takes the pain point and expands on it. The value need then takes the customer need and contextualizes it, right? And then with these in hand, you can craft an offering that is maximally meaningful to your client. And for principle number one, the concept of it being meaningful is vitally important because that's what makes the customer come back. Let's move on now to principle number two and what it is and in terms of how it is that we're going to be putting it to work. So principle number two is value goes beyond what your offering is. Now, what this effectively means is value is a holistic concept that can encompass additional points at which you interact with your client or your stakeholder, going beyond them buying or engaging your offering. And what exactly does this now look like? And in order to put this concept to work, let's do a little thought exercise, right? Let's think of the last 2 times that you bought something that was very expensive. That was quite pricey. Your experience likely fell into one of these 2 categories, right? Where you were like, oh my goodness, my money, I can't believe that I'd spent that much. It was such a useless purchase. It sucked from beginning to end. I can't believe my money has gone towards this purchase. Or you said, oh my gosh, it was so pricey. It was truly very pricey, but it was worth it. So you're able to differentiate between these 2 experiences. Why? What was it that happened in each instance that put that particular experience into its given category? And effectively, that was principle number 2 in practice. So if you've ever bought something that was pricey, but the overall experience of buying that product or engaging it, the service or the product was so good that you were happy to buy that product or engage that service once again at that exact price point, that was principle number 2 at work. Principle number 3 says that value is contextual and that context brings different understandings and applications of value. Now, what does all of that mean? Effectively, it means that teams within an enterprise internally and the client externally, each and all have different understandings of the approach to value because of where they are located, their contexts. Even if they're all talking about the same offering and operate within the same environment. So, principle number 3 is wonderful for when you are working in teams because it's actually not going to be possible for everyone in the same team, even though they're working in the same team, right? Or even though they're working in the same organization, they're going to have different perspectives with regards to what value means and how we can go about creating that. And I'm going to be obviously revealing what that is in a second. So, what exactly does this look like in practice? When you are looking to create value, create and deliver value rather, at an organizational level, you have to take into account for some of the ways that these contexts are differing from each other and how you can harmonize or work with them when you are creating value, right? That harmonization, that collaboration comes in especially clutch when there is a clash in value definitions. How would this look like? Within an organization, there's obviously different teams. There's the marketing team, there's the sales team, there's the finance team, there's the fulfillment team. There's so many different departments within a functional organization. And this is true whether you have a big organization or whether you have a small organization. You have teams whose jobs it is to do specific things that make the organization or company work. In addition to this, on the outside, we have the client or the beneficiary or whoever it is that we're doing this work for. So, once again, let's look inside. In this particular example, we're going to be looking at the marketing team and the sales team. So, when it comes to the marketing team, they'll say, our bottom line is communication, and thus, value for us is along this metric. So inasmuch as the organization at the organization level has its own value proposition, has its own definition of value, the marketing team within or underneath that umbrella of the value definition and value proposition that the organization will have their own little subset of saying, okay, cool, the organization's value proposition is this, the organization's definition of value is this, but underneath that, we as the marketing team have our own sub-definition of value, what value means to us specifically as the marketing team within the organization. And as I mentioned, our bottom line is communication, thus value for us is along this metric. Therefore, we think that value is XYZ. Remember, we're not canceling out the value proposition or the value definition of the organization as a whole, but we're saying that in addition to what the organization has as its value definition, the marketing team says, yes, and this is ours for the marketing team. This is pertinent because now we're moving over to the sales team. And there's a slight difference because they're not the same team, right? For the sales team, they say, we actually talk to the client, right? And we practicalize the marketing team's messaging via sales, based on what or how our client engages with that messaging. So marketing puts out marketing materials that the client then engages with, sees the art adverts, sees the flyers, etc., etc. And the sales team engages with the client based on what the client has seen from marketing, right? So it's a sense of practicalization of like, okay, cool. Now that you've seen what we're about, how can we engage with each other, says the sales team. Our bottom line as the sales team is to make a sale and engaging with the client. Thus, value for us is along that particular metric. The sales team is obviously the way that the organization interfaces with the people that will be engaging the organization's offering. So therefore, as the sales team, we think value is XBZ. So the marketing team said that value for us is XYZ. The sales team says that value for us is XBZ. You see how it's similar, but it's slightly different. The marketing and sales team, despite the fact that they're in the same organization, have slightly differing contexts and so have slightly different perspectives on value. Finally, client now. The client says, I engage the offering itself and I talk to the sales team to put money in hand. My bottom line as the client is getting what I paid for and the end being happy with it. Therefore, to me, value is XWZ, right? Once again, similar but different because of the different contexts. Finally, we are here with principle number 4, which is that value is subjective and that subjectivity should be accounted for. So where principle number 3 talks about teams, principle number 4 actually speaks about the individuals themselves in the team. And this is why I love these two principles together, because they work side by side and they work sort of hand in hand as well. So for principle number 4, what this basically means is if you take 2 finance divisional managers that are in the same national group. So for example, you've got a finance divisional manager that's located in Canada, and you've got a finance divisional manager that is located in South Africa. Their approaches to value may be similar because they're both finance managers, but their personal expertise will always weigh in on their understanding of value and how to create it. Both of them, and you as well, whoever is engaging with them, will need to account for that subjectivity when you're strategizing on value creation. So, what does this actually mean practically, right? It means that there is a personal and individual understanding of the value that the person that you're speaking to will have outside of the title that they hold or the role that they perform. So that understanding will likely be informed by that title or that role, but the title or role is not the end all be all of their value approach. Neither is it the maximum extent of their understanding of value. Now, in basic terms, in very, very basic terms, just because you're speaking to a finance divisional manager, it doesn't mean that their understanding of value is just focused on finance. It might be that they had worked as a finance divisional manager at a company that manufactured carpets for export. And now they are working at a company that manufactures fruits for national distributors, right? They have the expertise of having worked at a company that was manufacturing for carpets for export. And so now they have a financial understanding of like, okay, cool. If we're looking to export a product, these are the things that we need to keep in mind from a finance point of view. Maybe that person also worked alongside lawyers or the law department, because obviously when you're exporting things, you need to keep in mind the legal definitions and the legal laws of the countries that you're exporting to. And then on top of that, as the finance person, you then also need to keep in mind, the financial implications of the laws of the countries that you're exporting to. So now this person who has worked in that type of company is now working in a company that doesn't necessarily do exports, but they have that knowledge in the back of their mind. And so when you come to them for, ideas on how to create value, they've got that wealth of understanding in their mind. So when you are then speaking to them, remember that they have that wealth of knowledge in the back of their mind, and that the way that they look at certain things when it comes to value creation will be informed by some of that expertise as well. That's effectively what principle number 4 says. Thank you so much for tuning in, for clicking through to this particular video on the art of value creation. And I hope you have a spectacular time now creating value in whatever your endeavors may be. Thank you.